Dear students, I welcome you to yet another lecture on corporate law. The theme of today's lecture is Theories of Corporate Social Responsibility. According to the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, corporate social responsibility is defined as a management concept whereby companies integrate social and environmental concerns in their business operations and interactions with their stakeholders. CSR is generally being understood as the way through which a company achieves a balance of economic, environmental, and social imperatives while at the same time addressing the expectations of shareholders and stakeholders. There are three main theories of corporate social responsibility. The first is Carroll's Corporate Social Responsibility Pyramid. The second is the triple line bottom theory. The third is the stakeholders theory. The first theory which we are going to discuss is the Carroll CSR pyramid. Carroll made a specific theory for the way that corporations interact with the surrounding community and the whole world. This theory is known as Carroll's pyramid of CSR. Carroll's theory is composed of four responsibilities that create a foundation or infrastructure for the business's responsibility towards society. The first responsibility is the economic responsibility. The second is the legal responsibility. The third is ethical responsibilities. And lastly, philanthropic responsibilities. We shall discuss each of these responsibilities in detail. Economic responsibilities. As a fundamental condition or requirement of existence, businesses have an economic responsibility to the society that permitted them to be created and sustained. At first, it may seem unusual to think about an economic expectation as a social responsibility, but this is what it is because society expects, indeed requires, business organizations to be able to sustain themselves, and the only way this is possible is by being profitable and being able to incentivize owners or shareholders to invest and have enough resources to continue its operation. In its origins, society views business organizations as institutions that will produce and sell the goods and services society needs and desires. As an inducement, society allows businesses to take profits. Businesses create profits when they add value, and in doing this, they benefit all the stakeholders of the business. Profits are necessary both to reward the investor or the owners and also for business growth when profits are reinvested back into the business. CEOs, managers, and entrepreneurs will attest to the vital foundational importance of profitability and return on investment as motivators for business success. Virtually all economic systems of the world recognize the vital importance to societies of businesses making profits. While thinking about its economic responsibilities, businesses employ many business concepts that are directed towards financial effectiveness, that is, attention to revenues, cost effectiveness, investments, marketing strategies, operations, and a host of professional concepts focused on augmenting the long-term financial success of the organization. In today's hyper-competitive global business environment, economic performance and sustainability have become urgent topics. Those firms that are not successful in their economic or financial sphere go out of business, and any other responsibilities that may be incumbent upon them become moot considerations. Therefore, the economic responsibility is a baseline requirement that must be met in a competitive business world. And so, economic responsibility is a critical part of corporate social responsibility. The second component of Carroll's pyramid is legal responsibilities. Society has not only sanctioned businesses as economic entities, but it has also established the minimal ground rules under which businesses are expected to operate and function. These ground rules include laws and regulations and in effect reflect society's view of codified ethics. They articulate fundamental notions of fair business practices as established by lawmakers at the federal, state and local levels. Businesses are expected and required to comply with these laws and regulations as a condition of operating. It is not an accident that compliance officers now occupy an important and high-level position in companies' organization charts. While meeting these legal responsibilities, important expectations of business include their performing in a manner consistent with the expectations of the government and the law, complying with various federal, state and local regulations, conducting themselves as law-abiding corporate citizens, fulfilling all their legal obligations to societal stakeholders, providing goods and services that at least meet minimal legal requirements. The third component of Carroll's pyramid is ethical responsibilities. The normative expectations of most societies hold that laws are essential but not sufficient. In addition to what is required by laws and regulations, society expects businesses to operate and conduct their affairs in an ethical fashion. Taking on ethical responsibilities implies that organizations will embrace those activities, norms, standards and practices that, even though they are not codified into law, are expected nonetheless. Part of the ethical expectation is that businesses will be responsive to the spirit of the law, not just the letter of the law. Another aspect of the ethical expectation is that businesses will conduct their affairs in a fair and objective fashion, even in those cases when laws do not provide guidance or dictate courses of action. Thus, ethical responsibilities embrace those activities, standards, policies and practices that are expected or prohibited by society, even though they are not codified into law. The goal of these expectations is that businesses will be responsible for and responsive to the full range of norms, standards, values, principles and expectations that reflect and honor what consumers, employees, owners and the community regard as consistent with respect to the protection of stakeholders' moral rights. The distinction between legal and ethical expectations can often be tricky. Legal expectations are certainly based on ethical premises, but ethical expectations carry these further. In a sense, then, both contain a strong ethical dimension or character, and the difference hinges upon the mandate society has given business through legal codification. While meeting these ethical responsibilities, important expectations of business include their performing in a manner consistent with the expectation of societal mores and ethical norms. Recognizing and respecting new or evolving ethical or moral norms adopted by society, preventing ethical norms from being compromised in order to achieve business goals, being good corporate citizens by doing what is expected morally or ethically, recognizing that business integrity and ethical behavior go beyond mere compliance with laws and regulations. As an overlay to all that we discussed about ethical responsibilities, it should be clearly remembered that in addition to society's expectations regarding ethical performance, there are also the great universal principles of moral philosophy such as rights, justice and utilitarianism that also should inform and guide the company's decisions and practices. The fourth component of Carroll's pyramid is philanthropic responsibilities. Corporate philanthropy includes all forms of business giving. Corporate philanthropy embraces business's voluntary or discretionary activities. Philanthropy or business giving way may not be a responsibility in a literal sense, but it is normally expected by businesses today and is a part of everyday expectations of the public. Certainly, the quantity and nature of these activities are voluntary or discretionary. They are also guided by the business's desire to participate in social activities that are not mandated, not required by law, and not generally expected of business in an ethical sense. Having said that, some businesses do give partially out of an ethical motivation. That is, they want to do what is right for society. The public does have a sense that businesses will give back, and this constitutes the expectation aspect of the responsibility. When one examines the social contract between business and society today, it is typically found that citizenry expects businesses to be good corporate citizens just as individuals are. To fulfill its perceived philanthropic responsibilities, companies engage in a variety of giving forms: gifts of monetary resources, products and service donations, volunteerism by employees and management, community development, and any other discretionary contribution to the community or stakeholder groups that may make up the community. Although there is sometimes an altruistic motivation for business giving, most companies engage in philanthropy as a practical way to demonstrate their good citizenship. This is done to enhance or augment the company's reputation and not necessarily for noble or self-sacrificing reasons. The primary difference between ethical and philanthropic categories in the four-part model is that business giving is not necessarily expected in a moral or ethical sense. Society expects such gifts, but it does not label companies as unethical based on their giving patterns or whether the companies are giving at the desired level. As a consequence, philanthropic responsibility is more discretionary or voluntary on the business's part. Hence, this category is often thought of as good corporate citizenship. Having said all this, philanthropy historically has been one of the most important elements of corporate social responsibility definition, and this continues even today. The four-part definition of corporate social responsibility was originally published in 1979. In 1991, Carroll extracted the four-part definition and recast it in the form of a CSR pyramid. The purpose of the pyramid was to single out the definitional aspect of CSR and to illustrate the building block nature of the four-part framework. The pyramid was selected as a geometric design because it is simple, intuitive, and built to withstand the test of time. Consequently, the economic responsibility was placed as the base of the pyramid because it is the foundational requirement in business. Just as the footings of a building must be strong to support the entire edifice, sustained profitability must be strong to support society's other expectations of enterprises. The point here is that the infrastructure of CSR is built upon the premise of an economically sound and sustainable business. At the same time, society is conveying the message to business that it is expected to obey the law and comply with regulations because laws and regulations are society's codification of the basic ground rules upon which business is to operate in a civil society. If one looks at corporate social responsibility in developing countries, for example, whether a legal and a regulatory framework exists or not, significantly affects whether multinationals invest there or not. A legal infrastructure is an imperative to provide a foundation for legitimate business growth. In addition, business is expected to operate in an ethical fashion. This means that business has the expectation and obligation that it will do what is right, just and fair, and to avoid or minimize harm to all the stakeholders with whom it interacts. Finally, business is expected to be a good corporate citizen, that is, to give back and to contribute financial, physical, and human resources to the communities of which it is a part. In short, the pyramid is built in a fashion that reflects the fundamental roles played and expected by business in society. The next theory of corporate social responsibility which we are going to discuss is the triple bottom line theory. The triple bottom line theory was found by John Elkington in his book Cannibals with Forks, the triple bottom line of the 21st century business. Triple bottom line can be considered as a corporate social responsibility framework that incorporates three dimensions of performance: economic, social, and environmental. As elaborated by John Elkington, the three dimensions of triple bottom line must obtain sustainable results. Sustainability is the main aim of the triple bottom line concept. The first dimension of the triple bottom line theory is the economic dimension. According to the TBL theory, the most important for a company is not to make profits but to achieve continuous profit for a long term. So business corporations start to enroll in the triple bottom line corporate social responsibility framework, as well as they draw a strategic plan through calculating expenditures and taxes, forecasting business climate factors, evaluate market benchmark, and avoid maximum risk threats. Real study for all these components will lead to achieve sustainable profits. The second dimension is social dimension. Business must pay attention to its social affairs as well as pay attention to its financial affairs. Achieving social sustainability by a corporation is a must in the TBL CSR framework. But since societies differ from one region to another, every corporation has to collect data from national authorities concerning social affairs as unemployment rates, human rights, female labor force participation, health services, educational services provided by the government, etc. After determining the community's priority, the shareholders must take decisions to satisfy as much as possible the social needs. So, for a business to be stable over the long term, social activities of a business corporation must satisfy surrounding society needs as much as possible. The third dimension is the environmental dimension. Environmental sustainability is one of the main concepts in the triple bottom line framework. If business companies will not respect the environmental dimension, our children will not be able to enjoy the same quality of life which we are enjoying now. Corporations must pay attention to environmental changes and obey the new environmental laws while being careful to the consumption of natural resources. Corporations have to use the alternative energy sources in order to minimize the consumption of traditional sources of energy, for example, oil, gas, coal, etc. And it has to protect air and water resources while disposing of toxic solid waste in an environmentally friendly manner. All these factors maintain environmental sustainability. It is clear that the flexibility of the triple bottom line concept allows companies to implement social and environmental strategies in a sustainable manner. To summarize, these three notions of sustainability, economic, social, and environmental, guide businesses towards actions fitted to the conception of the corporation as a participating citizen in the community and not just as a money-making machine. The third theory with respect to corporate social responsibility was given by Edward Freeman in his book titled Strategic Management: A Stakeholder's Approach. Freeman, in his stakeholder theory, argued against the traditional management model. The traditional management model advocated maximizing stakeholder value because of the risk assumed by them in terms of money invested in a company. The model, in a way, implied that catering to interests of other groups, such as employees, customers, as being in conflict with maximizing the shareholder value. The traditional model, to an extent, suggested that if investors' interests were served, even at the cost of other stakeholders, it was acceptable. Freeman posited that management is responsible to protect the interests of other groups beyond investors. Freeman defines stakeholder as any group or individual who can affect or is affected by the achievement of the organization's objectives. His definition included other groups such as customers, suppliers, community, and the environment as stakeholders. He argued that, as in the case of stockholders, these groups also have a stake in a company, although not necessarily fiduciary in nature. Therefore, management is responsible to them and should work to maximize value for them. Freeman, Vellamuri, and Moriarty argued that when a company fulfills obligations towards a multitude of stakeholders, for example, investing in employee safety and advancement, selling quality and safe products, and earning a decent return on investment, then asking the additional question of whether or not it is socially responsible simply makes no sense. It is a meaningless question. In fact, the authors preferred the term company stakeholder responsibility to convey in its entirety the philosophy of corporate social responsibility from the stakeholder perspective. They argued in favor of focusing on how value is created in the basic business proposition by making shareholders and other stakeholders better off. According to Clarkson, an important contribution of the stakeholder theory in corporate social responsibility conceptualization is that it recognized an individual company's responsibilities towards specific stakeholder group, including community and environment. Thus, he argued that the stakeholder theory helped in clarifying and explaining the word social in corporate social responsibility. Second, the stakeholder approach suggested balancing interests of the shareholders with other stakeholders by suggesting that the needs of the shareholders cannot be met without satisfying to some degree the needs of other stakeholders. It turned attention to considerations beyond direct profit maximization. Dear students, this is all with regard to today's lecture on theories of corporate social responsibility. Hope you have been able to understand and enjoy the lecture. Thank you and stay blessed.